Professor Chin, can I record too? Thank you.
Can you remind me what the bonus point structure is for the multiple choice? If you get 0 wrong, you get all points, 1 wrong, just 1 point. What was the structure?
Let's see. Did I give 4 points on this? So any item you miss would be -1.
Excuse me, Instructor Jet. You said that the extra credits were going to be worth 8 points. So is the crosswords worth 4 points and the primer's worth 4 points, or how is it broken up?
I thought I gave you 7 points, didn't I?
I believe you said 8, but I can check the recording.
Let's see.
We'll take 10 if you like.
Total of 7 points.
I'm sorry, where does it say that? It says July 7th. Doesn't it? Oh, okay, I see it now. I'm sorry, I apologize. Thank you.
Professor, can you also clarify that next Tuesday SA3 will be due, or is that going to be extended? Right now on Canvas it says next Tuesday, but we just handed one in last night.
Professor Jett, are you going to show the muscle handout you gave us, the hand-drawn one? Are you going to show us the answers for that?
I never I never fill those up.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, starting with page 13A. I want to get through the heart today. So on us, the heart is a 4-chambered double pump. And yeah, each day it will be pumping 2,100 gallons. And the blood will be traveling through 62,000 miles of blood vessels. The location and orientation where the heart is. What I need you to be specific about it. The heart plus some parts of those large blood vessels that's going to be taking blood in and out of the heart will be located at the middle mediastinum. Okay, it's a middle mediastinum right there. And yeah, so is that. And the middle mediastinum has several parts to it. There's the anterior mediastinum, it's just hardly anything there. It's the space with material there that is between the back of the sternum and the pericardial sac. And sitting at the back of the sternum would be some small blood vessels as well as some nerves. Posterior mediastinum, again, depending on what level you make this cut across, then this one is pretty much all the way below the trachea. So you don't see the trachea sitting here. And the posterior mediastinum, at this level, you can only see this isn't drawn very nice. Anyway, this is a bottom view. So this will be the left lung, this will be the right lung. And yeah, this is the left side of the body. And that would be the thoracic aorta, esophagus. Okay. And then there's also superior mediastinum and inferior mediastinum. Inferior mediastinum is, we don't mention anything there because it's just connective tissue between the diaphragm and the cardiac muscle. So where the heart is, middle mediastinum. Okay. And then as we go through maybe I'll try something else now. Yeah. This works better. So for the pericardial sac, okay. I didn't care very much about how they label these things in your text. I usually just go with the two layers of the pericardial sac, starting with parietal pericardium, which has two layers, and I'll just go with the fibrous layer and the parietal layer because you've already been told that the parietal layer portion is always going to be the serosa. So that is the reason is often referred to as a serous pericardium. So when the heart pushed in here, whatever is covering the fibrous layer would now reflect onto the surface of the heart. So that part would be the visceral layer. Visceral layer in your book is going to be referred to as the serous pericardium again. So that's the reason I don't go with those. Okay. So the pericardial sac, which is out here, would have 2 layers. Okay. And there's a fibrous layer. Attached to it is the parietal layer, which would be those simple squamous cells, the ones that would be sending out serous fluid. And then when the heart pushed in and that layer reflect on it, I'll simply refer to that one as the visceral layer. Okay. It's the same piece of material. And then you have that potential space here again, the pericardial cavity. It's usually about 1 millimeter, and you would have thin film of serous fluid sitting in there. And that thin film of serous fluid filling up that pericardial cavity is something that we all need, okay? Because when that heart is beating, and if these 2 layers start rubbing against each other and start building up frictional heat, that can cause someone to die. When the blood that is entering the heart and the blood that is leaving the heart have a difference of 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, that's enough to kill a person. So in other words, person doesn't need to be stabbed through the heart to die. Just ripping the pericardial sac around it would eventually kill that person. Especially when a person is exercising rigorously and the heart is beating fast. So that's the importance of the pericardial cavity. And also every now and then, when a person is infected, especially with bacteria, some parts of these 2 layers, the parietal layer and the visceral layer of the serous pericardium, would have some some areas that would be fused. So
Professor, is there a
Yep.
way to get stabbed in the heart and not die?
only if that item is left there.
Ah, okay. Because I think there were stories of people surviving that. So
Only if that item is left there. If it's pulled out, then person is not going to last very long.
okay, gotcha. Thank you.
um,
Professor, I had a question. When someone has hypertension and then they begin to take medications for that, what does the heart do? How does it react to that?
it's more than just the heart. It has to do with getting several areas in the body to send out hormones, and that may slow down the heart rate a little bit, but at the same time it may actually, usually it should not be something that is working the heart. Most of the time it's a matter of getting the smooth muscles in the large blood vessels in the body to relax.
Oh, that
And-
makes sense.
Yeah, and that would build up the diameter,
That
and
makes sense.
that would
Thank you.
lower. Yeah, that would lower, and then eventually, when we get to the endocrine system, you will get to know what happens with several major areas of the body that would be sending out the hormones, either to raise the blood pressure or drop the blood pressure. Okay, so now we've gone through the pericardial sac, and now that visceral pericardium is not just covering the heart muscle, okay? It actually would be covering the blood vessels at the surface of the heart, as well as the fat that would be there. When we excise a heart from the cadaver, once we break through the pericardial sac, we don't see any of things that looks like this. Okay, it's still mostly fatty material covering almost everything. And that fat you need right there. That is the item that is going to keep your heart from bruising, especially when you are rigorously exercising and this thing is constantly slapping against the back of your sternum. So you need all that fat that is being covered by the visceral pericardium. Visceral pericardium is almost transparent. Okay. So it's very thin piece of material. So after all that material that's been covered here, then you would find the heart muscle, myocardium. And then once you get into the heart chamber, lining the wall of the heart chamber would be the endocardium. Endocardium is also simple squamous epithelium, and that is continuous with all blood vessels through the body. So once it gets into the blood vessels, it'll be referred to as endothelium. Okay. Now, all right. So any questions on these layers here? Now, before we get into the structures of the heart, then the reason I mentioned ours, our heart being four-chambered, with the other organisms, the fish only has a two-chamber heart, and then I think the frogs would have a three-chamber heart, and the birds would also have the four-chamber heart. Okay. So before we get into the structures here, I need you to get used to these circulatory circuits. Okay, systemic circuit, pulmonary circuit, coronary circuit. So because once you know this and you go into looking at different structures at the heart, then you know which direction that blood is flowing to or coming from. Okay. Start with the systemic circuit. Systemic circuit has to do with the heart delivering oxygenated blood to the rest of the body, and the rest of the body will be returning oxygen depleted blood back to the heart. So at those parts of the body, all the arteries would be colored red, and all the veins would be colored blue. Okay. Pulmonary circuit has to do with the heart sending oxygenated depleted blood to the lungs, and after the gas exchange there in the alveoli of the lungs, oxygenated blood will be returning to the heart. So the deoxygenated blood would be going from the right ventricle, which is this part right there, right there. And then it would continue into the pulmonary trunk. And then the pulmonary trunk is going to bifurcate into right and left pulmonary arteries. and make very certain you understand what arteries are and what veins are. Okay. Arteries are the ones that's going to be taking blood away from the heart, and veins would be taking blood to the heart. So now that blood is going to go into the lungs, and after gas exchange there, then oxygenated blood would be coming back to, yeah, I can hardly see it from the front anterior side, but mostly it's going to be in the back of the heart. It'll be the left atrium. It's going to be entering the left atrium by 4 pulmonary veins, 2 from each lung. Okay. So this is the only area on you that would have deoxygenated blood traveling in arteries and oxygenated blood traveling in veins. Okay. Then coronary circuit, that has to do with the heart delivering the oxygenated blood to the heart muscles, and then the heart muscles returning oxygen depleted blood back to the heart. So getting to know these circuits would give you a better understanding and readily figure out where the blood is going as we are going through the structures. And as you review these, stay with the direction of blood flow instead of just looking at all these labels on these illustrations and trying to figure out each one separately. That's going to take more time, and it's a little bit confusing. So this is what I usually do in the lab is when I start showing people the real hearts, then I need them to understand that all these drawings in the textbook, and sometimes even with many of the photographs that they take, it kind of messes up how blood would actually be flowing through the heart. Okay. And there will be professors that would draw 4 squares on the whiteboard, and then you have the 2 atria sitting on top and the 2 ventricles sitting at the bottom. And that would largely have students thinking that the blood is going to go straight down from the atria down to the ventricles, and from the ventricles going up. That's not how blood flows in your heart, okay? And the heart is never stationed like this on you. The flat bottom of the heart is the one that is going to be sitting on the diaphragm. So now you can readily figure that this needs to be horizontal, not tilted like that. Okay. So once you know that, then you can easily figure that blood is going to be traveling across from the right atrium to the right ventricle, almost horizontally, not from top to bottom. Okay. Yeah, eventually I would have a better picture that I found. Nope. So now you can understand how things are. What's open here is the right atrium. This is the superior venous cava. Inferior venous cava is here, and it's right atrium. And this is the tricuspid valve. And right here, right ventricle. So blood goes from here across. So in the lab, and usually what I tell the students is that when you pick up the heart, you look for all these external landmarks, okay? And that's how you find items almost right away. And in most of the items in the lab, the heart's been cut away without these blood vessels here, and also without the aortic arch. So it would just cut pretty much right across there. And first thing I want students to find is the pulmonary trunk. Once you find the pulmonary trunk, you know you're looking at the anterior portion of the heart. You do not see pulmonary trunk in the back. Okay. Once you find that, go to its right. That item is the ascending aorta. Then go to the right of that, the superior vena cava. That is going to lead you to right atrium. So now that's essentially the end of the systemic circuit. Your superior vena cava and inferior vena cava would be all that deoxygenated blood from the rest of the body coming to the right atrium of the heart. Other things to look for. Apex of the heart. Then you have the right and the left auricles. Those things I don't test people with because still no one actually knows the function of the auricles, okay, why they are there. There are actually parts of the right atrium, left atrium, yeah. Interventricular sulcus. Make sure you understand this definition of term sulcus, okay? Essentially, that is the term we use a lot in anatomy for grooves. This is how a groove is formed when the heart constantly getting larger and larger, as well as the blood vessels there would get larger and larger. So whatever is building up that we need to form around those blood vessels. So do not mix up interventricular sulcus with the blood vessels. Okay. These blood vessels are sitting in that sulcus. But don't mix up the blood vessels with sulcus. Sulcus as a groove. And there would be coronary arteries that you can somewhat see in the front of the heart. With most of those heart, that's we've gotten these blood vessels to show. So on the anterior part of the heart, you can readily see the anterior interventricular artery and the right coronary artery. Okay, those two. Ligamentum arteriosum is the connection between the top of the pulmonary trunk with the aortic arch. And eventually we'll go over what this thing was in the fetus. And then there will be a lot of fat. Okay. And in the back of the heart is where you can find the coronary sinus. That is the largest vein that is going to be taking all the deoxygenated blood from the heart muscles and returning that to the right atrium. And I don't know why your textbook has, still has this picture. This isn't right, okay? When we refer to the back of the heart, okay, most of those structures are actually at the bottom, okay, almost. They're at the bottom of the heart. So this flat portion of it is where the diaphragm is, okay. This is slightly a little bit raised up from there, but still this part of it would be very close to the diaphragm. So understand that whenever we mention something that is on the back of the heart, it is very close to the bottom. And then the actual shape of the left atrium is much closer to what it's like here. These four items are the pulmonary veins that's going to be sending the oxygenated blood from the lungs back to the heart. So these four veins do not push their way that far deep into that left atrium. In the lab, when some of these things were cut somewhere around here, just one big open item now, you won't be able to see two on each side very often. So these pulmonary veins do not go all the way in like that. Okay, they stop here. So in other words, the shape of the left atrium It's like a rectangle back here. Okay, not like that. So now we'll go over these items together with how blood is going across these chamber. And one thing I need you to know, when we start talking about the chambers of the heart, makes no difference how you slice through the heart, okay? Because their shapes are a little bit different. And when you look at them, especially in these pictures, and even with the real hearts, you may think that those chambers are different in size. They are not. They're only different in shapes. All four chambers has the same volume of blood enter, same volume of blood leave. That's how your heart works. Okay. So make sure you understand that. So we'll okay. Starting with the right I'll start with the right atrium. That's where all the systemic circuit blood is going to be coming here. So deoxygenated blood that's going to be entering. And the right atrium is the one that would have 4 openings. Right atrium has 4 openings. There's one opening for the superior vena cava, one for the inferior vena cava, and then it's not shown here. There is an orifice of the coronary sinus. Okay. So usually it's somewhere closer to almost near the opening of the inferior vena cava. Okay, somewhere right about there is the orifice of the coronary sinus. And you can see it here. Here's the opening of the inferior vena cava. That's the opening of the superior vena cava. This is the opening of the coronary sinus. And this is the right AV valve or right atrioventricular valve, also known as tricuspid valve. Okay, those are the 4 openings in the right atrium. Okay. Now, other items that would be here. So what I've just gone over would be the items that you can only find in the right atrium. And now go over some other items that would be in both the right and the left atria. So pectinate muscles. These are the pectinate muscles. The term pectinate has to do with comb. And anything that looks like somebody just had run a comb through them, that's what we mean by pectinate. So some of them would be relatively looking like they are somewhat parallel. Okay. So that's what these are. The pectinate muscles, heart muscles. And also the wall of the right atrium as well as the left atrium are much, much thinner than the walls down at the ventricles. That's because it doesn't take a whole lot of muscles to send the blood over to the next chamber. Okay. Then there's the fossa ovalis. Fossa ovalis shown here. And that used to be an opening in the fetus. It would be referred to as foramen ovale also. And eventually we'll go over how blood would be flowing in the fetus. Okay. At that point, because the lungs aren't working, lungs are totally collapsed in the fetus in the womb. So hardly any blood would be sent over to the lungs for gas exchange. So this would be one of the major detour of where the blood is going to go. We'll be shooting across from here to the left atrium. That stayed open until the person is born. Then the first inhale of air, lungs expand, and that piece of material is now sitting here. Both sides, the pressures are the same, and the fibroblasts sealed it up, but it would stay as the thinnest part of the intertracheal septum. So shows a little bit better with this picture. That is fossa ovalis. Okay. It's the thinnest part of the wall between the two atria. And then Oh, let's see. One other item I need you to know as you are going through the circulatory system is that no blood vessel and no heart chamber is ever empty with air in it. Okay. So even where you have capillaries that are collapsed, then it would still be blood plasma going through, even though blood cells cannot go through there. Okay. And that is the reason why blood is connective tissue. There isn't any, in a living subject, there isn't any air bubbles in any part of the circulatory system. Okay. So just figure that in all parts of the body, and how you deal with your blood vessels, and anytime you press on any part of the body, or even when you squeeze, reach in on someone's heart and squeeze that heart, a living person's heart, it's very much like you're squeezing at one of those gel tubes. Okay. So keep that in mind, because I need you to know how these valves work. Okay. So fossa ovalis and, well, the SA note in the right atrium, you don't get to see it because it's cardiac muscle. And these are totally muscles that would be sending out impulses. Okay. In other words, get to know that no nerves come inside the heart. There may be some sensory neurons that come to near the surface of the heart, but no nerves would enter the heart. That's what makes heart transplant possible. Heart muscles are the ones that would be undergoing depolarization through sending out impulses. And the SA node is the one that starts. So eventually we'll go over those ones. Yeah. We'll go over those ones later. So now, tricuspid valve, right AV valve. Okay. So if you have difficulty figuring, tricuspid, bicuspid, mitral, etc., you can, if you know which side of the heart you are looking at, then if you just simply go in with right atrioventricular valve, right AV valve, or left AV valve, that would be fine. When you're looking at these valves, as I mentioned before, nothing is empty here, okay, in a living subject. So look at some of the, especially the two chambers, the ventricle chambers, having very much like a room that has two doors, and when one door opens, the other one would close. When one closes, the other one opens, because you want to look at these ones as water gates. Okay. So it's whatever fluid that's in here that's going to be pushing them open and close. It's nothing so much about how these muscles contract and relax to draw the blood in, etc. Okay. When these muscles contract and relax, it has to do with them helping to form the pressure inside these chambers. Blood flows from high pressure areas to low pressure areas. Parts of your circulatory system has the lowest pressure would be the right atrium of the heart, and also including these parts of the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So once the blood gets to those parts of the vena cava, pressure should be somewhere around 0 millimeter mercury. And then at the right atrium, usually is negative pressure. So that's how things work. Don't ever look at even how some of those those plastic items in the lab. um, that would be showing how water goes from one chamber to the other one. And when students look at those, it's almost like how water is pouring from something to an empty cup. So those are all the structures for the right atrium. Okay. Now, moving to the right ventricle. The right ventricle the only items that are at the right ventricle. Your book doesn't mention this one, but I need you to know it. Okay. It's a conus arteriosus. I'll come back to that in a bit. For now, I'll come back to septomarginal trabecular also. Starting with the tricuspid valve. Okay. So tricuspid valve is the one that is going to have 3 of these flaps here. That's why it's called tricuspid. And there would be 3 sets, not just 3, but 3 sets of papillary muscles. And the papillary muscles are the ones that would have the trabeculae carneae, rising up from the trabeculae carneae, because once you get down here, these are sets of the cardiac muscles that are interconnected, and they're going at different levels and different directions, unlike those pectinate muscles up in the atria. So the trabeculae carneae looks like a net. So that's why it's called trabeculae. And then you have these knobby muscles rising from them. And because they more or less look like nipples, so these are papillary muscles. And very often there will be more than just 3 sitting here. There are 3 sets of them, and they would be setting up the 3 sets of corti tendinii. The corti tendinii are these fibrous items, okay, attached to the tricuspid valves. So when blood needs to come through here, from the right atrium, the SA node sets of muscles would start the contraction and then that would push the blood right through here. And of course, everything down here would be relaxing. So now the other set of valves, the pulmonary valves, would be closing. Okay. And at this area, and many of these photographs and illustration doesn't show the three-dimensional item that would be here. They cut it away on that one. So right here is where you have the conus arteriosus. So for the right ventricle, make certain that you can readily figure or visualize this as the okay, what do you call those? Items that you be pouring water through, and it has a stem down here and a cup here. So this is one of those upside down items, okay? And the reason this is referred as the infundibulum, this is where you have that two portion. So conus arteriosus only occurs on the right ventricle, and that is the item that is going to direct the blood into this area and push open the pulmonary valve to enter the pulmonary trunk, okay, and sending the blood over to the lungs. So again, look at these things as water gates. It's not so much what these muscles are doing all the way out, away from, so far away from those valves. It has to do with the fluid that is pushing at them. So this only happens when these ones are relaxed. Okay. So now, when eventually the impulses from the SA nodes eventually gets all the way down to here, and it's now rising up around into all these other muscles, then they would start to contract. And when they do that, they'll be squeezing that blood through the pulmonary valve, and on the other side it'll be through that aortic valve. But anyway, since we're on this side now, I also need you to know about septomarginal trabecula also known as a moderator band. Again, the wall of the right ventricle in a healthy person would be much thinner than the wall of the left ventricle. You need a lot more pressure to send the blood to the rest of the body. Okay, that's the reason left side is like that. Right side doesn't take much pressure to send the blood over to the lungs, sitting right next to the heart. But what I need you to know is that that's the essay note. So essay note is the pacemaker. It starts this, and it would get both atria contract together, and eventually both ventricles would be contracting together. And there's the AV note. And then because you have these fibrous material here, there's no muscle here. So that's why you need the relay item, and that would be the SA node up here, and the AV node is the relay of the impulses. Once that gets to that, it will continue down here all the way to the apex of the heart, and also be curling up, and so that heart get the heart to squeeze from the dead ends to get the blood away from the dead ends down here. Okay, now the items that are referred to as a moderator band, actually they're on both sides, but because the wall is so much thinner on the right, you actually see some of them coming to the papilla. Papillary muscles. And the reason I need you to know about that is the papillary muscles are the ones that need to contract a split second before the apex of the heart. That's what that is. Okay, it's not labeled in your book. Okay. And in this picture, this has to be right ventricle. These are the papillary muscle, and this one right here, this one is the interventricular septum, and that's that item coming across, taking the impulses to get these to contract earlier, just a split second quicker than the apex. Why is that? They need to be firm, gripping those chordae tendineae before the muscles down here start the contraction and squeeze all the fluid in here to close the tricuspid valve properly. If not, if they are still relaxed and this already started, some of that is going to come up going back into the atrium. That's the reason for it. And once this is closed, whatever fluid that is being squeezed here needs to knock this flat, going and entering into pulmonary trunk. The ones here used to be referred to as the pulmonary semi-lunar valve. There would be 3 of them, and they would be very much like your shirt pockets. Okay, when fluid comes here, they will be flattened and then continue through here. And then once these muscles starts a relaxation, then whatever needs to drop back down would just fill up this, and that would totally block them from re-entering. Okay, so that's how that works. So don't look at these things as if there are nothing working on them. Okay, it's not like an empty room. So conus arteriosus is the shape of the structures here that's going to be linking and directing the volume of the blood to enter. And septomarginal trabecular or moderator band has to do with these items. That's going to get these papillary muscles to start the contraction split second before the apex. And then right. So that's okay. Other things that may be here. All right. Definitely both sides would have the chordae tendineae, papillary muscles, trabeculae carneae. Yeah, interventricular septum between them. The AV node sitting somewhere here between the two. Atrioventricular bundle. Those are the specified cardiac muscles. that would be sending the impulses. Okay. So any questions on the right and the left? Sorry, right atrium, the right ventricle.
People can get those replaced, right? Like they use a bovine valve or something.
Yeah. Yeah, they can. So now have a full understanding that on the right side of your heart, it's all deoxygenated blood. Okay. Left side of the heart is going to be oxygenated blood. Okay. So okay. I'll continue that in 10 minutes. Going with the blood to the lungs and then come back to the left atrium.
Are we on break right now? Did he just leave?
Yes, he said 10 minutes.
Thanks, I missed it. Thank you.
No problem. Professor.
Yes.
I was wondering, is there any chance that you would be able to post all the assignments that are due before the end of the semester, since we've only got 2 weeks left?
Right. They'll be there.
Okay, thank you. Because some of us in the class, we work full time and, you know, we need to utilize the time that we're off work to complete the assignments and everything. So that would be appreciated. Thank you so much.
Okay. So anytime you see this shape here that looks like an upside down funnel, always, that's the right ventricle. Okay. And conus arteriosus has to do with right here, because it's upside down, right at the part where you have the cup and the shaft of the neck of the funnel. That's why they call it the conus arteriosus. It's kind of like a cone right there. All right. So once the blood is in the pulmonary trunk, then at the top, it bifurcates into the two pulmonary arteries, and then they're going to start branching. Three at the right lung and two at the left lung, entering those lobes of the lungs. And then continue into the capillaries around the alveoli of the lungs. So after the oxygen has been picked up, then it's going to be coming back, and you'll be entering the left atrium with those 4 pulmonary veins. So the left atrium, the left atrium has 5 openings. Okay. So 4 of them would be for the pulmonary veins, and then there is a bicuspid valve, also known as mitral valve, and you can also refer to that as the left AV valve. And then you also would have pectinate muscles up there. You also have the other side of the fossa ovalis, and also AV node. Okay. So now continuing to left ventricle. Left ventricle, you have the bicuspid valve. Bicuspid because it has just two flaps there. And you have two sets of the chordae tendineae to two sets of papillary muscles. Not just two, but there will be more than, usually more than two. And then you also have chordae tendineae here, and yeah, all those items. Now, from here, when these muscles contract, it will be pushing the blood through the aortic valve. Aortic valve is the same structure as the pulmonary valve. And again, used to be called the aortic semilunar. And then once that blood comes through that, you'll start entering the ascending aorta. Okay. So any question on these structures in the heart? Okay, the four chambers. All right. The item that is referred to as the fibrous skeleton, if you cut through the heart at that particular plane, then you would see the four valves there. Okay. So now I'll go over, okay, for systemic circuit, it would be the start portion would be at the left ventricle. And then once the blood continue into the aorta, then you'll start with having all these branches, and also further down, you'll start spreading the blood to the rest of the body. And then the end of the circuit would be the right atrium. For the pulmonary circuit, start point would be right ventricle, and the end point is going to be left atrium. Okay. And then for the coronary circuit, the start point is going to be at the ascending aorta, directly behind the aortic valve. You would have two holes there. Then connecting with those would be the two coronary arteries. Right coronary artery is going to be traveling here, and it's going to give off some branches. And the one that we can normally find readily is the right marginal artery. And then it's going to go back to the back of the bottom of the heart, and it's going to give off the posterior interventricular artery back there. Left coronary artery will also be coming off from the bottom of that ascending aorta, and it's going to travel behind the pulmonary trunk. Once it clears the pulmonary trunk, it's going to send out the anterior interventricular artery. And then the other part that would continue to the back would be the circumflex artery. And that's actually more than just these two, but it will be a whole series of where these blood vessels are going to start meeting. When you have blood vessels meeting, those are areas that would be referred to as anastomoses. ES would be the plural. Okay. So that's what these are supposed to be. Okay. So all those smaller branches of these two, right and left coronary arteries, would be forming those anastomoses. And then after that, the deoxygenated blood is going to be returning. And there are three major vessels that is ready to give you the understanding of where the bulk of the deoxygenated blood would be coming back to the right atrium. So this one here does be traveling right next to the anterior interventricular artery is the great cardiac vein. The middle cardiac vein is the one that's going to be traveling right next to the posterior interventricular artery. Small cardiac vein would be next to the right marginal artery. And there will be some other ones, the anterior cardiac veins. They would find their own way to send the blood into that right atrium. But for the great cardiac vein, contractile strength and pulse speed by releasing norepinephrine on SA node. Parasympathetic division of ANS is activated during rest and digestion when cranial nerve number 10 vagus nerve releases acetylcholine on SA node to reduce heart rate and pressure. Vagal massage is a fast way to slow down heart rate. So that is the difference between SA node and other heart muscle cells here. Okay. Um, the atrioventricular bundle would be the one that is going through the interventricular septum, and it'll continue to go all the way to have branches to the apex, and then when it goes back up, it'll be referred to as the subendocardial branches. I think your books still refer to that as the Purkinje fibers. Okay. The cardio acceleratory center is in the brainstem, the medulla oblongata. And from there, you'll be directing the sympathetic stimulus of SA and AV nodes. So the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous division, it has to do with working against emergency situations. So immediately, this would be sending the impulses through the spinal nerves, and the spinal nerves would come to the SA and AV nodes, and that's where they would get the SA node to start increasing pulse rate. Okay. The cardio-inhibitory center is more or less right next to the cardiac acceleratory center. And that one is the one that's going to be directing the parasympathetic division of the ANS, going through the vagus nerve. And this one is the one that's going to be releasing acetylcholine onto SA node and maybe AV node also. And immediately it would decrease the heart rate as well as the contraction strength of the heart. Parasympathetic division is the one that is responsible for resting and digesting activities. Okay. And sympathetic division is the one that is responsible for fight, flight, fright response. Okay. So other items that is going to well, let's just go with an example here. the vagus nerve is the one that would be traveling on the medial border of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And you have three things that are linked or fused together right there. It would be the common carotid artery, the internal jugular vein, and the vagus nerve. Those three items would be wrapped in something that's very often referred as the carotid sheath. So when a person had gone through a traffic accident, but not injured, but still, because that was an emergency situation, you would have gotten the brain to send out and start the cardiac acceleratory center by the sympathetic division. And the hormones that is going to be going through with that one is the one that is going to raise the pulse rate, is going to raise the blood pressure and all that. And once it's in the blood, it's going to continue to travel throughout the body. And that's the item that's going to keep the person shaking. Okay. And when the ambulance people come by and see that on that person, and if they figure that that person is young enough, and perhaps not these days, but still, if they figure that that person doesn't have problem with the circulatory system, and they would just probably tell them to sit down somewhere and massage that part of the neck, and that would cause the vagus nerve to release acetylcholine onto SA and AV nodes, and very quickly that would slow down the heart rate as well as blood pressure. But if they figure that person may have problems in the blood vessels, they would probably just put some the warm heated items to wrap around that part of the neck, and that would also get the vagus nerve to do the same thing, because if they figure that person has problems with the cardiovascular system, then just snapping here may knock off some blood clots, and this is the blood that's heading to the brain. So that person may have would have a risk of having strokes. Okay. So as far as the cardiac cycle is concerned, systole has to do with the two ventricles contracting. Diastole is when those two ventricles relax. Okay. So ventricular systole is when blood is pushing out. Okay. So as far as the sounds go, I don't know why they keep doing it this way, but the lupped up sound, just keep understanding that SA node is the pacemaker, and that's the one that actually starts the the systole of the two atria. Okay, so so the one that actually first happened would be the closing of the pulmonary and aortic valves with the ventricles relaxed. Okay. But but with the perhaps this one's a little bit louder sound. That's why they use it. But so with that sound that is listed here, the with the closing of the AV valves, that is the contraction or systole of the ventricles. Okay. So that finishes the the heart, and on Monday well after after the exam tomorrow, I'll go a little bit into the blood vessels, and then by Monday I'll finish the cardiovascular system, and then I'll start the nervous system. It will be taking me at least two days to finish the nervous system. So and definitely by Wednesday, I should be able to finish the lymphatic system. So these are the three systems that's going to be on the third exam. And sometime tomorrow, I would have the next two quizzes posted here. And let's see, as well as the exam 3 bonus items. So exam 3 primer and the crossword puzzles. Yeah, sometime tomorrow I'll have that posted. And then let's see. This one has 4 pages for you to fill in. Okay, the cardiovascular lab quiz 11. Okay, and the pictures there. Four pages for you to fill in, and then these pictures are from that photo atlas. Okay, and you should be able to find many of these pictures on PAL on PAL 3. Yeah, it should be there. And then number 12. 2 pages to fill in, and then that is 50% of your score, these 2 pages, and the other 50% would be the self-quiz on PAL 3.1. So I need the scores, I need the score of that one together with the fill-in portion of these 2 pages sent to me. Okay. So and they should be there tomorrow. Yeah. And at this time, yeah, also I would change all the ones for the rest of the pre-labs. Okay. I think one person already done all of them. So, okay. So I'll close now so you can have more time to handle reviewing material for tomorrow's exam. Okay.
Professor, I had a quick question.
Sure.
Is there any way we can make an appointment with you to review what we miss on the test? Because like we have no idea after the test is over. We know we know how many we missed, but we don't know what we missed, so we can improve ourselves for the final.
Oh, yeah, at some point I'm going to set out the instructions for that optional comprehensive final. Has is something that you need to do on the study area. It's not with my exams. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And then also tomorrow, is there any way that before you move the page, you could let us know you're about to move it? Because I know last time some of us missed questions because we were looking down and it moved and we'd skipped one and then we tried to fix it, but it was too late. Is there any way you could just say you're moving it? It would be greatly appreciated.
All right.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That's the reason at the end I ask for people who want to well, okay.
Yeah, I know, but like we already filled in so many wrong and we don't know which one by that point. And it was just like kind of a bad thing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Fine.
Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, so I'll start closing. Good night.
Good night.
Night.